is what these people have been reduced to, breaking into mains pipes to get some clean water. For many of the people of Basra, British rule has meant no improvements in their lives.
Every people in Iraq happy because of Saddam go away, because he was a dictator. But now we are in bad conditions.
British troops have got the message and have begun escorting into town water tankers from Kuwait. But a bigger humanitarian aid effort is vital here. We had one spare bottle of water left in our car. These are desperate times in the new Iraq.
There's enough grain here to feed the entire population of Iraq for 4.5 days. But this shipment from Australia is at Kuwait's docks. In another part of the city, a warehouse is filled with high-energy biscuits. 3 packets of these can keep someone alive for a day. Another warehouse holds 40,000 bags of flour. All of these essential supplies on the wrong side of the border. The military needs to do more to restore law and order so the aid can get moving, says one agency.
We have been asking them and hoping that they could secure some of the key facilities that are required for the humanitarian aid to begin flowing again, one of which was the port of Qasr. Unfortunately, it has suffered quite a bit of looting, and the port will be delayed in its opening because of that.
So with a big question mark over the security of their precious cargoes and of course the safety of their staff, the relief agencies simply can't move the amount of aid they need to up this road to Iraq. If that situation doesn't improve within a couple of weeks, they say, then those already in need will face even more desperate times. The organisation, which coordinates other relief efforts and works with the military, hopes to send these supplies to Iraq within the next 24 hours.
I think that dust will settle down very soon. I think our friends, the British, taking good care of trying to settle the security problem. And I'm sure the Kuwaiti aid effort will move very soon.
It seems there's a real chance here to prevent a crisis developing.
Getting acquainted. Very deliberately, the US Marines are trying to strike up a rapport with the people who are now their responsibility. But there are still problems bringing control to Baghdad. In parts of Baghdad that the Americans haven't yet reached, there has been looting. This man took the horse from a stable at the home of Uday Hussein, Saddam's eldest son. We found the house, a large gaudy structure, a place that just a few days ago people daren't even look at for fear of their lives. This indeed was one of Uday's homes. Here the ruling family could look out over the Tigris. People have wasted no time clearing the house and wrecking what couldn't be easily taken.
They haven't quite worked out just how to reach this chandelier yet, but other than that, they have stripped this place bare in less than 24 hours. Call it plunder, if you will, or perhaps payback.
These Iraqis were rifling a home of a senior member of the Mukhabarat, Saddam's dreaded secret police. It also seemed to be some kind of monitoring station. There was sophisticated equipment here. In the basement we found burning archives and evidence of electronic surveillance. This had been a nerve center for spying, a place from where the bully boys kept tabs to keep control.
We're now in the bowels of a secret police monitoring station. Look at all this gadgetry. Quite sinister, really. Part of the apparatus of Big Brother.
These people are stealing from a shopping centre. It has become widespread, but it's not being done with total impunity. These thieves are trying to flee the German embassy, having been shot at by a guard. John Irvine, ITV News, Baghdad.
In the dust and the poverty of southern Baghdad, we found a population busy with the task of liberation. The liberation, that is, of anything that wasn't nailed down and of quite a lot that was. And amid this frenzy stood the US military machine that so recently rolled into this city, refusing to intervene. For now, at least, they are soldiers, not policemen, and will do nothing to stop these people using literally anything that moves to grab this chance, to grab what they can. Barely a day after fighting fierce gun battles on the streets of this city, the US Marines now man checkpoints or take the chance to wind down after 3 weeks of fighting their way towards the capital. It all ended much sooner than most of these men had dared hope. But perhaps the most important thing for these Marines, more important even than the early end to this battle, is their reception by the Iraqi people. Now, they believe the Iraqis are welcoming them here. Whether that is right or wrong, it does make these troops feel that they are liberators rather than occupiers. As I spoke to them this afternoon, that was something they kept coming back to.
They definitely feel liberated. You can see it, especially in the children that haven't had as much time having to put up with it.
Lots of waves and
thumbs up.
People saying thanks and good for George Bush and everything.
How does that make you feel?
Very happy.
Very overwhelming. The people were just absolutely incredible.
You feel you're liberating them or occupying them?
We feel we're liberating them because eventually we will leave and go home to our wives and families.
I really enjoyed seeing the people react the way they did.
Yeah.
When we rolled through town. They were really happy to see us for the most part, and that was really rewarding for us.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a liberator or an occupier?
For me, it's a liberation.
Definitely a liberation.
The danger now is that the euphoria of the past 2 days turns to a dull resentment as the US presence here stretches from weeks to months. These Marines freely admit their specialism is warfighting, not nation building.
In Kirkuk, there was no need for American troops to topple the statues of Saddam. The Kurds did it for themselves by hand. Here, there was no doubting the passion of the crowds. The hand that oppressed them for so long is broken. Saddam's defeat is a triumph for the Kurds. Earlier today, the Northern Front finally broke wide open. On the heels of jubilant Kurdish troops, we drove through what were the Iraqi front lines. The burnt-out tanks hit by American warplanes testified to the stubborn but futile resistance that Iraqi troops put up until they fled. Today, many surrendered, unable to endure the bombing any longer. These soldiers told me that they hadn't heard about the fall of Baghdad because any radios they had were confiscated by their officers days ago. Such Iraqi military equipment as survived the American bombing has now fallen into Kurdish hands. For days now, the Iraqis have been falling back on this front, mile by mile, yard by yard. But today, that attempt at a careful retreat has turned into a rout. East of Kirkuk, the Americans were still bombing to open the way for the Kurds. We came in from the west, down deserted roads through the oil fields that have made Kirkuk such a rich strategic prize. A statue of Saddam in uniform had failed to inspire resistance, and it was torn down by a fire engine commandeered for the task. Kurdish soldiers celebrated by firing wildly in the air. Inside the city, an orgy of looting had begun. The Kirkuk Chamber of Commerce was emptied of its contents, and Kurdish guerrillas hauled away their loot on pickup trucks. Before our eyes, Kirkuk has given itself over to anarchy. Here in the center, a supermarket is on fire, and in front of it, a small crowd is trying to tear down yet another of the images of the fallen dictator, Saddam Hussein. All over the city, there is looting, there is firing in the air, and there are still, it seems, small pockets of resistance, particularly in the military district of Kirkuk. But the pillars of Saddam's power have been smashed by American bombs. This was the headquarters of the secret police in Kirkuk. In the offices of the Ba'ath Party, Kurdish soldiers smashed official slogans and then amused themselves by pretending to be the men who used to control this city. For the Kurds, this is the capture of the place that they see as their historic capital, and they are determined to efface every symbol of the tyrant's rule. Julian Mannion, ITV News, Kirkuk.
Iraqi TV before regime change. Saddam, songs about Saddam, and even more Saddam. But from today, Iraqis can no longer complain about too many repeats. This is the catchily titled Towards Freedom TV, made in Britain and America, with an hour of the latest news from Baghdad. They're beamed straight into Iraqi homes by a specially adapted US C-130, which circles the skies 5 hours a day. But TVs need power, and in Baghdad electricity's in short supply, unlike propaganda.
Those days, when they had to labour under the lies spread by Saddam's propaganda machine, are now at an end.
Only now, the Foreign Secretary told MPs today, were Saddam's dark secrets being revealed.
2 days ago, ITN's Bill Neely gained entry to Saddam's secret police building in Basra.
So desperate are they to tell their story that they began reenacting what they and their brothers and friends had suffered.
There were no television cameras in Saddam's torture chambers. There are now.
Winning the battle for Baghdad proved easier than feared. The battle for hearts and minds has only just begun. Nick Robinson, ITV News.
You're watching the impossible, or at least it would have been last week. Down with the Ba'ath Party, they chant. Saddam's men would have shot them within 5 minutes. Now, Saddam's men are no more.
Government, the President Saddam Hussein is go from my country. All people is very happy.
Saddam's men are no more, and his yacht is no more. This was his presidential palace at sea, with a place for his helicopter to land. It had every luxury, until this week, when the people of Basra looted and burned it. Even a few days ago, this would have been unthinkable, because for 30 years here in Iraq, Saddam has been untouchable. Now his ship, like his power, is destroyed, and only the man himself still evades the fury of his people. Fury barely controlled.
Stay! Get up! Stay on there!
A very young female soldier trying to stop an Iraqi mob from robbing a bank. The whole unit was having a hard time. But they are catching looters, catching thieves and catching robbers. These 5 tried to steal an ambulance. They're finding weapons, lots of them, of every kind except one. Weapons of mass destruction. Remember that? Not a single one has yet been found.
I can't comment on the intelligence which led states to believe that they had it, but there is some time to go, I think, before it will be found, and I believe it will be.
And the other hunt, of course, is the hunt for Saddam Hussein and the hunt for members of his regime. Are you still part of that?
No.
The Royal Marines are now beginning a slow pullback through the south they captured and out and back to Britain in a month. They lost not a single man in combat. Theirs has been a huge success. They decimated the Iraqi army that faced them. Rebuilding Iraq will be tougher. Water, democracy, freedom and responsibility. Tough tasks for a poor, shattered country. A hard road ahead. Bill Neely, ITV News, Basra.
We approached cautiously. The Marines had secured Saddam Hussein's Adamir Palace only a few hours earlier, and everyone was jumpy.
Who do you work for? British Television, Channel 4 News.
We were soon to find out how jumpy. They were sitting, waiting, on alert. At 4 a.m. they'd moved in and the firefight had been fierce. They were on a manhunt.
Tell us what's happening here. Why are you here?
Well, we got word last night that Saddam and his son were here, so we came down here to find out.
Any sign of them?
No. No, we ain't seen nothing. Came in, just been taking a lot of small arms RPG fire the entire ride here, and all around this place has been a lot of small arms, a lot of RPG fire. But as far as inside, we hadn't seen nobody.
They said there had been shooting from the mosque opposite, now pockmarked with return fire. Fanatical fighters from other Arab countries are said to be the holdouts rather than Iraqis. We heard periodic shots from the American snipers above. They're warning to drivers to stop the car. We walked further into the palace compound. There wasn't much left of the luxurious dwelling built at the height of Saddam Hussein's powers in the late 1980s. The Marines were still searching for potential threats. They said 38 of their number had been injured in the morning's fighting.
So this is all that remains of one of Saddam's palaces. Now it's a communications centre for the Marines. They've moved in, most of it's destroyed, and whatever's left they'll use. They, of course, are joyous and triumphant. I have to say, after what we've seen with the little girl who was injured and the other people, it's very hard to feel that this is another great day for Baghdad.
Suddenly, a rocket-propelled grenade. Inevitably, the snipers on the roof returned fire.
The city, 2 US soldiers were killed, 30 were wounded. Iraqi casualties are unknown. And this was American soldiers targeting Iraqi vehicles yesterday. It's not clear whether the Iraqi soldiers were still present or had abandoned the vehicles. Their fighters or civilians could hardly contrast more with that of their former president, whose luxury yacht remains moored in Basra. It's taken a beating and is being looted. But we still don't know if this war has done to Saddam what it's done to so many of the Iraqi people.
Saddam Hussein had tried to ethnically cleanse this place of Kurds. Arabization, he called it. If there were any Arab settlers left here, they must surely have kept off the streets. This was a Kurdish welcome for Kurds. And as in Baghdad, the symbols of his tyranny, contemptuously insulted, humiliated with the dirt of their shoes, then toppled. The Americans here too, their flags discreet, but here they matter. The Turks, nervous of a Kurdish state, don't want the Peshmerga to stay. The White House choosing words carefully, saying today American forces will be in control, not promising, though, to remove the fighters. The Turks have so far been persuaded not to send troops into northern Iraq, but they're clearly alarmed.
We're following everything very closely. We'll do whatever's necessary. We're having talks, but Turkey's position on this is clear. There's no doubt about that.
We talked to Turkey. Secretary Powell spoken with his counterpart in Turkey today, and Turkey understands that we understand their concerns, and Kirkuk, which is the city that is involved here, will be under American control.
Solo, an airborne radio and TV studio, a weapon of psychological warfare now part of the early efforts to win the peace.
We will help you build a peaceful and representative government that protects the rights of all citizens. And then our military forces will leave. Iraq will go forward as a unified, independent, and sovereign nation that has regained a respected place in the world.
The new videotaped statements from President Bush and his closest ally are an effort to calm worries that dictatorship will be replaced by indefinite military occupation, and to answer any Iraqis who might still doubt a new day is at hand.
I know, however, that some of you feared a repeat of 1991, when you thought Saddam's rule was being ended, but he stayed and you suffered. That will not happen this time. This regime will be gone and ended.
The immediate goals of the broadcasts are to provide information about humanitarian aid and other government services, seek help searching for weapons of mass destruction, reassure Iraqis the Saddam Hussein regime is gone from power, and to promise the United States and Great Britain will quickly transfer power to a new Iraqi administration. Many Iraqi TV facilities were destroyed in the bombing, and many Iraqis still lack power. But the Pentagon is working to get more and more information, critics say propaganda, to the Iraqi people.
We're working very aggressively to find the contacts within the city and in the country who would like to begin an Iraqi broadcast network, if you will.
The main target audience is the Iraqi people.
But the White House also hopes these new broadcasts and a new Iraqi TV network in the works will prove a counterweight to Arab broadcasters who are highly critical of the war and who suggest its true goal is U.S. control of Iraq's oil wealth. John King, CNN, the White House.